Hey, Jaan here from Socialist Alternative, and in this video I'll be talking about the workers' state. So I'll be going over how Marxists envision the workers' state, how it differs from the state under capitalism, and why it's a vital part of any revolution. And it's a vital part that is often misinterpreted and mischaracterized. So what is the workers' state? Well, the workers' state is the product of the transitionary period between capitalism and communism. It's what occurs when the proletariat creates their own institutions of power based on what they've learned from their struggle. For instance, in 1917, the workers' state came in the form of Soviets and factory committees. So I often get asked what the difference between the workers' state and the state as we know it under capitalism is, especially by anarchists. The fact is that there is a fundamental difference between the institutions of power created by the working class and the institutions of power created by the capitalist class, and that stems from the fundamental differences between the two classes. The capitalist state plays the role of enforcing the class rule of the minority over the majority. It essentially acts as a seemingly accountable body which justifies the exploitation inherent within class society. Importantly, it is necessarily the product of class antagonisms, which means that it arises directly from the need to oppress and exploit the working class. Essentially what this means is that the capitalist state plays a role of providing democratic cover and justification for the oppressive and exploitative system of capitalism. However, because workers do not have an interest in perpetuating oppression and exploitation, instead they actually have the interest in smashing these institutions, the workers' state takes on a fundamentally different character. And so the workers' state plays a radically different role than the capitalist state, because it doesn't need to justify oppression and exploitation. So how does the workers' state arise? Well, as Lenin goes over in State and Revolution, which I'll be doing a whole nother video on, so stay tuned for that, the workers' state must necessarily come from the smashing of the bourgeois state. And from the very instant it is created, the state as a concept within society is already in a state of decomposition. I think this is a really important element to discuss, because when we're talking about the withering away of the state, we're not talking about the capitalist state. That needs to be violently and radically overthrown. Instead, it is the workers' state that withers, because through the process of revolution, the working class learns to administer society in their own interests. The need for a state entirely diminishes because the system of class rule that the state is built upon is gone. However, the workers still need ways to organize society and lead the transition from barbarism to socialism. So, almost naturally, democratic institutions of power form. So I think it's really useful to discuss what these actually look like. Well, the case study for what the workers' state looked like is the Russian Revolution, obviously before Stalin's counter-revolution, which I've got a whole nother video on. I mentioned it earlier, but basically the system they had was of factory committees and Soviets. So the factory committees consisted of all the workers of a workplace getting together and having meetings, debates, and electing delegates who would then represent them in the Soviets. The Soviets acted on essentially a citywide level, with delegates from all the workplaces, meetings, and having debates. This seems very similar to the system of liberal democracy that we have in Australia, but there are two very important differences that make the Soviet system significantly more democratic than the Western liberal democracies that we have across the world now. The first being that these delegates were paid the same wages as the average worker. The reason for this is that it stops careerism, and it prevents the delegates from being separated economically and therefore in class from those they are representing. The second difference is that these delegates were instantly recallable. This ensures that the delegates accurately represent the wishes of those they're representing. So I hope this video has given you a better understanding of the workers' state, sort of how it's different to the capitalist state, the way it's organized, using the example of the Russian Revolution, and how it comes about. So thank you for watching.